Welcome back, everyone. We have a great guest. We have Johnny Kelly from Patriarchs in Black. How are you doing today?
A little busy.
You
Sitting
can
in
tell.
traffic.
I can tell.
fighting New York rush hour traffic.
Yeah, that's
That
crazy.
still goes at this hour. Yeah.
That's insane, man. Especially it's like 7:30 over there. Well, 7:47,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. It's going on 8 o'clock, and there's still a ton of traffic here.
that's
But
crazy.
yeah, I'm about to escape New York again. I'm going to be in Jersey in a few minutes.
Nice.
But
Um,
anyway, how are you?
I'm doing great. Well, let's get into this. You're about to release a new record with Patriarchs in Black. With you being in so many bands before this, was your writing and recording approach the same as usual?
Uh, Kind of, yeah. Like the way it usually goes is Dan will he'll send me songs, riffs, songs, just a rough guitar track, and then from there I put the drums to it, and I kind of try to piece it together where I think like this might be the verse, this might be the chorus. I'm just going by like just the way the guitar riffs are structured together, and I get a basic idea, and then from there, and then I do. I sent him what I'm hearing,
Yeah.
as far as drums go, and then I'll get feedback from him, and then it goes out to whoever's going to be singing on it, whoever's going to be playing bass, if there's going to be other instruments. Dan will have, he'll tell me if he hears something like, he's like, oh, I hear like, like a piano part here, or like, like a string part, like, like we've had like a cello and violin and stuff. And then after it goes to the other players and stuff, then I see what the song is. And then I'm always like, oh man, I could have done this. I should have done that here. It's
Yeah.
always second guessing everything. But like truthfully, I've always been like that with any song that I've ever worked on. After hearing it finished, then I was like, oh, now I hear it differently. Even going back to like working with Type O.
Yeah.
Like we would work on songs, work on demos, and then when I would hear like the completed song, then I'd be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that there. I should have done this here instead. Or,
Even
it's
after
always
years?
like, oh, even years later, I'll hear things differently than what was initially, I guess, like whatever put down. But yeah, I always hear it differently.
And then I heard in another interview that this kind of was a faster pace for you because Dan just like has everything going really quick. And this is the quickest you got a lot of your stuff done compared to usual other bands.
Pretty much except for actually working with Kill Devil Hill, the last record that we did, it was years of downtime, and then when we decided to start working on new music, that was happening quickly as well. But no one I work with is as fast as Dan is. Dan's actually really fast. I mean, even now, like we have the third record coming out next week, or what, 2 weeks,
Yeah,
and we're already into the fourth record.
that's crazy. That's because you guys
It,
just
it,
released your last one last year.
yeah,
That's insane.
I get confused, because like when we were talking about like when we were scheduling press and stuff like that, we'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about the record. I'm like, wait a minute, what record are we talking about? Are we talking about Visioning? Or are we talking about the new one? And I was like, wait a minute, Visioning hasn't even come out yet.
That's
So
crazy.
I would, it is crazy, but it's crazy in a good way. It's
Yeah.
always, I like keeping busy. I like always always having something to do.
Yeah. And
And
then with writing, do you write for other like instruments or lyrics in addition to all the drumming?
like if I hear something, like I won't say that I'll write something, but I'll say like like I hear something here, and then I'll try to I guess outsource it.
Yeah.
I'll be like,
And
well, I hear something here, like like something, maybe having like some strings here, or something
yeah.
that's not drums, and be like something's cool here. I get into a lot of disagreements with Dan in regards to guitar solos. He's not really big on guitar solos, and he likes songs that are short. He's not really into like the Type O.
Yeah, black
Short,
number
short,
one.
right, short songs for us were like, 8 minutes long. So I will like, make suggestions to Dan about more or less, or about arrangement. Be like, oh,
Yeah.
the chorus should repeat itself again here, or something like that. Or like, like I said, it needs a guitar solo. It needs some
Yeah.
kind of solo there, and that I'll get into, but not like coming up with like, like guitar lines or riffs or something.
Yeah. And you guys had a lot of guest musicians on this record. Were these people you wanted to collab with for a long time, or are these just people that are your friends that you're like, hey, dude, I want you on my record?
It's a little bit of both. It's like, like when Dan first reached out to me, and we were talking about like, doing something together. It Dan was like, well, who do you have in mind, like, like for a singer, or like, like a bass player. And I was when I was initially, I turned around to Dan. I was like, look, I was like, I'm in too many bands. I
Pretty
said,
much.
I said, I don't have the time to commit to being involved with. I said, I can't. I just don't have I don't have the time. I don't have the ability. I said, if you want to work on songs, I was like, I'm more than into doing that. Like,
Yeah.
like working on some new music, like, recording and I said, if you want it to be something like that, I was like, I'm totally on board. But I said, as far as like being in another band, I was like, there's just only so many hours in the day. I just don't have the time, which means that like, something else is going to suffer. And a lot of the bands that I'm in now, like, they suffer because I have to prioritize things, in a certain way. And I was like, I said, I just don't have the time or the ability to commit. And
And
I said, but if you want to do something else, I said, like I said, I know I'm finding myself repeating myself here. And so then it became, all right, why don't we, why don't we just not just ask to have like, different people, friends of
yeah.
ours, like, have different people, perform on the record and at the time it wasn't even a record. There was no record deal or anything, it was just us.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of along the lines of like what Dave Grohl did with Probot.
Yeah. That was sick.
Right. It was a really cool idea. And like, he had all like these guest players and stuff, and everybody made their contributions. And so I was like, why don't we do something like that? I said, between the two of us, we know a lot of people, and, we can get some like, some interesting people and just have fun with this. Which is what we wound up doing. And then there was a couple of people that we had never really worked with or did. I don't want to say we knew, but we reached out
Yeah.
to them and was like, hey, this is what we're doing. Would you want to play on it?
Makes sense.
And
I
so,
mean, they're not going to say no.
well, I mean, there was some people that was like, like they were like, no, I can't do it, for whatever reason, we don't have time, or like, whatever, there's no budget, whatever it is. There's a host of reasons. But, for the most part, almost everyone that we've invited to like, take part on the record has, joined us.
Yeah. And
So,
is there anyone that you'd love to collab with that you haven't collabed with before?
I mean, there's so many people that I would love to work with, or like,
Yeah.
like just to do like, playing a song, like first person that comes to mind is like Phil Demmel. And Phil Demmel plays with everybody. He's in more
He does.
bands than I think me. But like, Phil's a great guy, amazing guitar player and stuff, real creative guy. And it would be fun to, instead of just hanging out, it'd be fun to have him play on the record.
That'd be sick. I think he'd do it. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
sure he's the type
probably
of fan,
if he
you
had
know?
time. Well, I've been friends with Phil for a long time,
Yeah.
and so like, every time I see him, it's like, oh, like great to see you. We're buds and we stay in touch, But we've never had there's never been an opportunity where I was able to do something, to play with them, and I would love to do something to play with them. It'd be fun.
That'd be badass. And then I know yesterday they announced that you guys, like the surviving members of Type O, is doing something with Bill Ward. How did that come about?
That got kind of like, like the context of that got a little mixed up. Like this was something, like Bill, when Peter passed away, Bill had wrote a song in tribute for Peter. Now, I don't know lyrically. I have no idea if it has anything to do with Peter, but it inspired him to write this song. And so then so he wrote it. And then a couple of years later, he was telling me, he goes, I wrote this song. He's like, I would like you guys to play on. And I was like, yeah, sure, of course. And so then I want to say maybe like 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, me and Kenny went out to California. We did we did the drum tracks and the guitar tracks with Bill. And that was it. I think Kenny did some vocals on it. And then he got Josh to do a keyboard track on it as well.
Dang.
And so that was years ago. So now whatever comes of the song, I don't know, if it'll ever get released. I have no idea. It was just something that we did with Bill. And even like in that interview, the context was we were discussing that how Bill and I are friends.
Yeah.
We were talking about like being friends with like one of your heroes, not about Typo Negative doing a tribute.
That's crazy for it to get blown out like that a little bit.
Okay, yeah, it was just a little bit. It was a footnote in the conversation about my friendship, my relationship with Bill Ward.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, what are some of the challenges you find being a drummer now versus earlier in your career?
Well, like there's always there's challenges as a drummer. There's challenges as being a musician in the music industry. The matter of like surviving and working and trying to earn a living and stuff. It's gotten harder in some ways and easier in other ways to earn a living. Playing drums and but like I'm always trying to be a better drummer. I've now that I'm older, it's more important for me to practice and play more than I used to. I was talking about this recently, where all the years of being in Typo Negative, it was important to to play to the best of my abilities.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more about using drums in the context of a song.
Yeah.
It wasn't about trying to be a great drummer. It was trying to be the best drummer I could in Typo Negative. If that makes any kind of sense.
It does. I mean, when you talk about Typo, you guys are such a crazy different type of band compared to every band out there. So like your drumming was different.
It was different, but it was like, it wasn't, you never really listened to Typo Negative. It's like, oh shit, that drum track was crazy. Or like, like that guitar solo was insane. Or like, it wasn't like that. It was all about trying to make great songs.
Yeah.
So it wasn't about like trying to be great at your craft. Like,
Yeah.
like my part. I was like, how do I be the best drummer for Typo Negative?
Yeah.
That's what was important, not like to be a great drummer. And now I've taken more of an interest, in the latter part of my career I've more interest in just being a better drummer. Going back and studying and like working on exercises and stuff like that, and like stick control and working on working on my meter. Like I would try to focus on the things that I needed to focus on to be the best drummer I could in Typo Negative, which didn't really require like a lot of like a lot of hand speed or things like that. It was just trying to play like in time and like trying to keep my meter the best that it could. And but trying to use drums in the context of the song, not what's going to be like what's going to be like the coolest drum track in a Typo song. It just wasn't that kind of music. Now I try to work on being a better drummer. Like all the aspects of drumming. It's like I've taken more of an interest in that. And I think that now I think I'm a better drummer than I was, 15 years ago, when Typo was active. And when I see things like, oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have known this then. Or, I guess with age comes wisdom.
Yeah.
So they say, it's like, oh man, I could have done this, I should have been focusing on this aspect, or whatever. So now I try to do that. I try to put more attention into a lot of like the little things that I should have been doing the whole time.
Dang, that's crazy. It could have been like a whole different Typo Negative if like it was like
no, I think it would have been the same.
And you've been in the industry for quite a while. Like with touring, has your rig changed at all over the years, or is it like stayed about the same?
No, the kit's pretty much stayed the same. It's just it's 1 up, 2 down. When I play with Quiet Riot, I don't use a China cymbal. I use 4 crashes with Quiet Riot, sometimes 3. But for the most part, like, a couple of like, electronics things, when I play with Danzig, I have triggers that I would trigger samples for like, timpani drums and things like that. But for the most part, it's pretty much stayed the same the entire time. First joint typo, I played a bigger kit, but then like, after the first tour that we did, not really having a drum tech, and I had to like, set it up and tear it down myself every night. I was like, when the second tour came up, I was like, what don't I need? And plus I didn't like, I couldn't even afford to like, like reskin the kit. And I was like, wait a minute, two kick drums? I was like, that's a lot of money. I was like, maybe if I get a double pedal, then I only have to buy 1 kick drum head instead of 2, so it was like, it was a matter of like economics and not having a crew.
That's crazy.
And so then I kept it simple, and that just stayed with me, throughout my career. It's, for me, like anything more, it just opens the door it just opens the door for me to make more mistakes.
True.
So I try to keep it simple.
And you tour a lot. Do you prefer shorter runs nowadays, or do you like longer runs?
I was just saying, I miss the bus. I miss like, waking up in a different city every day and having a show. Like now when I like working with Quiet Riot, we usually mostly play on the weekends.
Dang.
So I'm usually out of town, like, from Thursday to say like Sunday, or like Friday to Sunday, or stuff like that. I'm not usually away from home for any like real extended periods of time.
Dang, that's crazy.
Which has like, which is good in a way, but it could be exhausting because everything's a fly date. So if I have like, 3 in a row on the weekend with Quiet Riot, I'm flying to every show for the most part, which means, like getting off stage, go to the hotel, take a shower, take a cat nap, be at the lobby of the hotel at like 3 o'clock in the morning to catch like a 5 a.m. flight to the next city.
Dang, that's crazy.
And then you get picked up at the airport, and then you go to sound check. from the airport, you go to sound check, and then after sound check, you might be able to catch a nap in between, and maybe get something to eat, go do your show, and then you do it all again the next. And then come Sunday, when I get home, I can barely talk. I'm a mess. Yeah.
Man, that's insane.
So that's like, the takeaway. Like, it's cool to be home. I'm home, pretty often.
Yeah.
But it's like, but when I get home, I'm like completely wiped out and exhausted. As opposed to like, you do a tour, you're on the bus, everything's, like right there, your bed is right there, right outside the venue. You can play, go to bed, wake up, and you get a whole bunch of dates done in a condensed amount of time.
That makes a lot of sense. And like, so you're still touring constantly here and there. I mean, even if it's over the weekends, what are some of your favorite places you still play? And do you have any festivals you enjoy playing?
I mean, since I've been playing mostly with Quiet Riot, doing a lot of my performing, I haven't really been to Europe in a few years. So I miss being in Europe. We went to London in the spring, and we played another show in the UK in the spring, and it was nice. But like I always enjoyed like touring the States.
Yeah.
And I miss like the places like Harpo's in Detroit, in places like that. And but I mean, every time, I mean, I look at what I do for a living, and it's like, like if I'm playing anywhere, it's great. It's like I really don't, I don't have a complaint or like a preference, or I'm just glad that I'm still able to do this and earn a living. And
with writing and recording, do you record yourself playing in the writing and recording process, or do you like programming?
For a long time, I was doing everything. I was doing a lot of programming at home and stuff like that. Like, like when we would work on like demos and stuff. This was like, after typo. But during the pandemic, I got into tracking live drums. I started getting into that. I dipped my toes into the pool, and then I jumped in, and now I have a studio that I have set up down in Dallas, where I have I have my all my preamps, everything's all mic'd up, I'm able to do multi-track recording, tracking live drums. Like every song that I work on, it gets better as far as like the sounds that I'm getting and stuff like that. So I took an interest in that during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so now that's what I primarily do. I don't really work with MIDI anymore. It's just like now it's set up where it's easier for me, to execute a performance. It's easier for me to do it live than to sit there and to go in and get into the editing aspect of working with MIDI.
Yeah.
And it was because it was it was cool in the sense because the technology is so easy. It makes everything so much easier now, and the sonically, like the sounds that you get from the stuff like Easy Drummer and Superior Drummer and working with I work with Logic Pro.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff is it just sounds killer compared to what was available to us 15 years ago, 20
Dang.
years ago. It's totally different now. But
That's crazy.
like to get like the little nuances and stuff, like it would take me a few minutes just to get like a ghost note, to sit right and to sound right in a track, where it was getting frustrated to work with MIDI, with samplers and stuff like that to get the sounds that I wanted, to make it feel right. And then I was like, you know what? Especially during the pandemic where nobody was going anywhere, and I was like, I had a lot of downtime. I was like, you know what? I'm going to start working, trying to learn about this stuff. And I was like, I'm always sending stuff to friends of mine that engineer, and I'm like, what can I do better? What is it? What do you think of this? Blah blah blah. How does this sound? What can I do?
Yeah.
Am I doing this right? What am I doing wrong? And I'm just like, I'm trying to hear, trying to get what I hear in my head onto a recording. And it's not like, it's not like I'm recording like Steely Dan songs or Tower of Power, it's hard rock, it's heavy metal. It's not going to be, sonically superior where there's complete isolation for every, microphone and stuff. No, it doesn't have to be that good. It needs to be a little dirty and a little rough around the edges and stuff. And so I've been learning about doing that kind of stuff, and I've dare I say I've been enjoying it because I've always hated the studio. I was never a studio rat. I always hated it. It was like the minute my drums were done, I was like, see you on the bus. Don't call me for anything. I'm not interested. I don't care. Like how you get a certain sound for a guitar or whatever. It just never interested me. I would literally fall asleep in the studio if I wasn't doing something.
That's
I always found
crazy.
it incredibly boring.
Makes sense though.
I always liked the live aspect of it. I like the playing together as a band and stuff like that. Not trying to chasing tone and stuff.
That's
Playing
crazy.
with delays and getting the right reverb or whatever, that stuff doesn't interest me. That stuff interested Josh and Peter and that was their thing. Or Kenny's taking more of an interest in it now. And so we would working on Silvertune records and stuff and doing things like that. But even the last Kill Devil Hill record, when I recorded it, it's I recorded it during the pandemic. I got my drum tracks done. Got in my car and drove back to Texas. Bye.
That's crazy, man.
But now I'm starting to take a little bit more of an interest.
And with you talking about playing with warm-ups, has your routine stayed the same, like with studio compared to touring, or does it differ?
Well, now I have to practice. It's important. Some of the stuff that I'm playing, like the style that I'm playing, I have to practice more. I have to practice exercises and things like that. I can't just go to show up after not playing for a couple of weeks and just expect to be playing at 100%.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's something that it's subconsciously gotten in the back of my brain where it's you're not a kid anymore. If I don't practice, my body's gonna freeze up. I don't want to get atrophy from not playing.
Yeah, that's crazy. How often a week do you play, not compared to playing your weekend gigs?
I try to get into the studio I try to play a couple of days a week before the weekend gigs. So at least I get a few hours. I get some hours in, and usually it's I'm usually working on songs for one of the other bands.
Yeah.
most of the time it's Patriarchs in Black because Dan's always sending me stuff. But I'm worried. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm older, where it's like where I have it in my head. If I don't play, my I'm gonna, like, my body's gonna, like, like go into like rigor mortis, or like, it's gonna atrophy or something. It's like, I gotta play, I gotta stay loose, I gotta, like, to be in better shape. And some of the stuff that I'm playing now, some of the things that I'm playing require me to practice more often, because some of the stuff requires a little bit more hand speed, and, things like that. So I always have to, I have to put the practice.
That makes sense. And you talk about the weekend shows and shit. Do you have any tour rituals? I mean, it's still considered kind of touring.
Rituals? No. I mean, I like to have before we start, and I like to have a couple of beers during the show, and then I like to have a couple of beers after. But there really isn't a routine. Like, I just try to, like, really just more or less get in the headspace of, like, try not to think about any other than, like, just worrying about the show.
And then if you could do a tour with a dream tour lineup, any band that you've been in practically, what would your dream tour lineup be?
I don't know. I mean, like, there was, like, so many things that we did, like, over the years and stuff. And I guess, like, little things that were, milestones, like, I guess accomplishments for me personally. But there really isn't. Yeah, I would love to tour with, like, Black Sabbath when they were, like, Black Sabbath in, like, 1971, or, like, tour with Led Zeppelin in 1970 or 73, or or like Humble Pie, or stuff like that. But it was like, everything that Typo did, like, it was a lot of fun, and it was. Yeah. I don't know, like, yeah, of course it could have been better, could have been worse, but like like our first big tour was going out with Motley Crue. That was a lot of fun. And then, like, we toured for months with Pantera. That was the best time on the road I ever had.
That's crazy. You played with all the best, man. That's awesome.
We did. We had the opportunity to, like, to tour with some, like, really cool bands. We toured with Ozzy, and then, a year later we did Ozfest in '97, and that was a blast. It was so much fun. And but it's like, you never really, when you're in it, you're not really paying attention to what you're doing, as far as, like, like, where you'll be like, oh, in a couple, years from now, we'll talk about this tour and how much fun it was, or whatever. We didn't really look at it like that. It was just what we were doing at that moment.
That's always a good way to look at it too.
And then the tour was over, and then we were like, well, I guess I have to go get a job now, because the band was always on the verge of falling apart and breaking up all the time. Like, you never knew what was going to happen from one day to the next. And then, it took Peter, passing away for the band to finally end. But, we had gotten to a point where we were like, well, I guess this is it for the rest of our lives.
And then, is there any, like, advice you'd give your younger self?
To go to school.
That's crazy. I get that a lot with musicians.
Well, I mean, it's such a, like, to be, like, what you dream about when you're a kid, and be like, oh, like, it's going to be this, I'm going to make it, and it's going to be great, and whatever. And I was like, when I was 18, 19 years old, I was like, oh, I'm going to be retired by the time I'm 30. I turned 56 in March.
Not bad. A lot of stuff.
I am nowhere near retirement. There's nothing.
I don't
like
think musicians get to retire, to be honest.
No, there is no, like, and now, like, it kind of freaks me out in a way, because a lot of my friends are getting at that age now, like, they worked for the city, they're teachers, and like city workers, government, federal, and they're all like, they're all starting to plan their retirements. They're like, oh, I did my 20 years, I'm done. What? I was like, wait a minute, retirement. I was like, what's that? I was like, that wasn't in the musician's brochure. They said, I didn't see anything about that. Like, one of my friends yesterday was talking about, he's got 1 year left until he can retire. And I was like, wow, retire 1 year, like, to be home and just make money. And I was like, now I'm like, working and hustling probably like 10 times more than I did when I was in my 20s.
I bet, especially with this environment in the industry now, you don't make the money you made back in the day. You just don't.
No, it's you have to. It has become harder to
hustle.
Make earn a living. Yeah. I mean, stuff like, selling records, or like, even record deals now are a joke. They're not even like real deals. There's like, it's like the record deals, most of the ones that I'm dealing with the small bands now, it's like you have to pay to make your own record. You make the record, and a label will put it out for you, and then you split the money in half.
That's crazy. That's
And then
insane.
it's frustrating. It's just different. And so
Yeah.
then you have to, instead of like, just lying down and being a dinosaur, you have to, circumvent those things, and you have to like change your approach to thinking of the music industry.
Oh yeah.
And like I'm still catching on to the importance of social media.
That's
I
it.
just
That's
I,
what
I
makes
like
me
I like watching, like, car accident videos and stuff like that. That's where my fun is. And and I read the news, and I stay in touch with friends, and but using it as a tool to, like, promote your band and things like that. It's like it's stuff like I know it exists, like, stuff like Bandcamp. I still don't have, like, the concept of it is still kind of like, above my head.
Yeah.
And using Instagram. I use Instagram more, and like, according to my kids, Facebook is out.
Yep,
but
it
I
is.
but I still use that primarily, and
Yeah.
I'm stuff like, like Spotify, and like there's like a lot of these things that are available to me that I need to start using more, and
Mhm.
I'm still, like, I'm dragging my feet on
Yeah. And
it.
and then you've like accomplished a lot in your career already. Do you have any stuff left on your bucket list that you'd love to accomplish?
Well, yeah, of course. Like there's always, like it's, I mean, I'm excited that, like, still making records. I got records
Right?
coming out all the time, and like it's, like the records are coming out, records are being worked on. Like, like a lot of my time is around playing drums, and that's, to me, that's a win. And
And
so it's like, so like as far as like accomplishing is like, just, yes, of course, I would love things to be better than, what they were today. Like
yeah.
tomorrow, if tomorrow's better, great. If tomorrow stays the same, not so bad. So it's, but I just keep on pushing ahead, and that's,
Yeah.
I'm always, moving ahead. The thing that kind of burns me out on it is the, like, a lot of like the hustle, which, for a lot of years, all I had to do was be in Typo Negative, and that was it. That was one band that was able to do everything, and then I was
Yeah.
able to, I had Typo and I had Danzig,
Yeah.
and I don't know how it worked out, but it did, because the 1 year Typo would be busy, Danzig wasn't doing anything, and then Typo would go on a break, and then Danzig would get busy, and they would
Yeah.
flip flop year after year.
That's
So
crazy.
that worked out really well. And then, like, and then Peter passed away, and there wasn't any, Typo.
Yeah.
Typo was finished, so there was, a lot of that work, and, like, how I earned a living primarily was gone.
Right.
So it's like, all right, what am I going to do? And then Danzig wound up getting busier, and so that was enough to keep me busy,
Yeah.
like, for, pretty consistently for a few years. But now, since the pandemic, Glenn, like, Danzig isn't really working that much. He's doing a lot of Misfit stuff, and,
Yeah.
he's got movies. He does other things. And then, and then it worked out where I was able to join Quiet Riot. Now Quiet Riot's been keeping me busy since during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so it's always like, like I'm always like looking forward.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know if it's like a work ethic or a survival instinct. It's somewhere in between those two.
Yeah. And then for someone listening to you for your first time, what top 5 songs in your catalog would you suggest them to listen to?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I never looked at it like that. No one has ever asked me that question, ever. I mean, there's some pretty cool stuff in there, actually. Looking back, I would say, like, like, check out any of the Typo records that we
Oh,
did. Like that would be a good start. Like, like everything that I've, like most of the stuff that I've done, I'm, pretty proud of. And, like, like it's always been something cool, and there's like a cool experience tied to it. and like stuff with Typo, even the record that Kenny and I did with Vinnie Paul produced, the Seventh Void record, that was cool. There's really good songs on that record. The record that is Silver Tomb, that's a really cool record. I would say like check out Suicide. It's like this epic song. It's like four songs in one song.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of peaks and valleys in it, which I thought was really cool. And the last Kill Devil Hill record was killer. It was a solid record. And that's it was a little bit different for me drum wise, something a little different. And the record came out really good, and I'm really excited about it. And like a song like Blood on the Water or Pharmaceutical Sunshine, those are solid songs. A bunch of the stuff that we've done, Patriarchs in Black, there's a lot of cool stuff on those records, and the records just keep coming out.
I agree.
They just keep coming out, and there's there's a lot of cool stuff in there. What was it? And even like a bunch of covers, stuff that hasn't been on the records that we've done, and we do just have fun.
Hell yeah.
And I've even got my brother to play guitar on a couple of Kiss songs, I Stole Your Love. He did the solo on it. We covered Twisted Sisters Destroyer. I got Danny to play on that, do the solo on that song, and it's a lot of fun.
Hell yeah.
And it's cool. I like the Patriarchs in Black stuff because I like it because I'm doing everything myself.
Yeah.
I do my own engineering, my own. It's just me in a room. I hit record and I play, and so it's and I'm learning something as we're recording. So as we're making the records, I'm learning, and I'm getting I'm getting an education along with putting out a record.
Hell yeah.
So check out all of it.
You've had a hell of a career. That's what I'll say.
On paper, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I'd like to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
See everyone next interview.